This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Journalist Isaac Saul is painfully aware of a growing list of anti-Semitic crimes that have taken place since October 7th, 2023. He keeps track of them, week after week.
Shocking news from Washington that you're waking up to. Last night, 2 Israeli embassy staff members were shot and killed as they left an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum.
A couple weeks ago, there was the murder of 2 Israeli embassy employees, a young couple. They were about to be married.
The suspect chanted, "Free, free Palestine," while in custody.
This weekend, a group of Jews in Boulder, Colorado, got set on fire.
It happened at a weekly gathering to support Israeli hostages in Gaza. FBI investigators say the man had a makeshift flamethrower and hurled devices into that group.
Yeah, it feels like we're in a really scary and tenuous place right now.
Isaac runs a website called Tangle. Its whole mission is finding a way to talk across political divides. And as part of that, he's been pretty transparent about who he is. For the last couple of years, he's said he identifies as a Zionist. It's colored how he sees the war in Gaza and everything that's followed, including these attacks. He understands the fear that anti-Semitism can ignite.
You know, somebody literally lit the Pennsylvania governor's house on fire with his family inside in like an anti-Zionist act. These things are like, they are the reason why Zionism exists. And when I see them and process them, I feel a strong pull toward the notion that a Jewish state is necessary and worth defending and worth fighting for. I mean, it's kind of this weird cycle that we're in and the way these two sides feed off each other.
Yeah. I mean, in the Boulder incident, the perpetrator said he wanted to kill Zionist people. And that detail was just so striking to me because it really, to me, it underlines how this word, Zionist, has become a weapon. It's just become this dividing line for so many people.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I have a colleague who's a bit younger than me. I'm 34. I think she's 23. And she was telling me, as I wrote this piece, we were talking about it, and she was telling me, you know, in her social circles at her age, like the word Zionist is a slur, basically. I mean, she said like that is literally how a lot of her really liberal friends use it, which is a totally different environment than the one I grew up in, even just 10 years before her.
I wanted to talk to Isaac about his embrace of this word, Zionism, because last week he did something pretty vulnerable. He changed his mind about it publicly. He did this in an essay that was 7,000 words long. He titled it, "I Think I'm Leaving Zionism," or "Zionism is Leaving Me."
The thing that I'm feeling is that this ideology that I've subscribed to is producing outcomes that I really abhor, and that feels so destructive for the cause of creating a safe homeland for Jews or the cause of protecting Jews globally.
Yeah.
The timing of the piece was unfortunate for me in some ways because, yeah, I published it on Friday and then the attack happened. And, you know, I expected and received a lot of email and comments from people who feel that I'm responsible for attacks on Jews because I'm accusing Israel of an ethnic cleansing in Gaza. And I think that's a really, really, really dangerous and flimsy accusation, but I got a good bit of it. And I did brace for that when I saw news of the attack.
Today on the show, how in the midst of violence, a committed public Zionist came to think differently. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. This process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, just hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Men today face immense pressure to perform, to provide, and to keep it all together. So it's no wonder that 6 million men in the U.S. suffer from depression. It is okay to struggle. Real strength comes from opening up about what you're carrying and doing something about it so you can be at your best for yourself and everyone else in your life. If you're a man and you're feeling the weight of the world, talk to someone. With over 35,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it's convenient, too. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/whatnext. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/whatnext. I wonder if you can go chronologically for me. You recently wrote about your experience as a young man who went from being pretty secular as an American Jew to being a religious, committed Zionist after visiting Israel. So can you walk me through that transformation? Tell me about your first trip to Israel, what it was like, and why it was so profound for you.
I mean, like a lot of Jews, I went to Israel on birthright for the first time. I was in college. I was 21 years old.
Birthright will give you a free trip to Israel if you're Jewish and show you around. It's propaganda, but it's a rite of passage for a lot of Jews.
Yeah, I would say most of us, at least on the trip I was on, understood that we were on effectively a propaganda tour of the country. But I use that word not as a total pejorative. I mean, part of the propaganda is that they want you to move there, or they want you to love Israel. They want you to feel a connection to the Jewish homeland. And so they build the trip accordingly, and it's effective. I grew up in the Philadelphia area. Obviously, as a Jew in the U.S., you have community in a lot of places. I had a synagogue. I had Jewish friends. I went to the JCC. But going to Israel for the first time, you're sort of welcomed like this kind of long lost family member who's returning home. And you're given this sort of embrace that I think feels very distinct from what you ever experience as an American Jew, even as a secular Jew. Most of my relationship to Judaism outside of my immediate Jewish community was just a feeling constantly that I was a little bit different. I mean, like the classic, it's it is a minority, quote unquote, experience. Like, you get made fun of for being a Jew, and kids make fun of your nose in high school and make jokes about how you're cheap. And, nobody really understands Hanukkah or bar mitzvahs, and they ask questions about it and they don't get it. And, you have to suffer through nonstop Christmas commercials that don't mean anything to you. And like the total commercialization of all these kind of Christian holidays that are so dominant in the US. And it's in your face a lot in the States. And then you go to this place where you're not a minority on the streets, where everybody kind of understands your cultural upbringing and your religious background. And
it sounds intoxicating.
It is intoxicating, and they know it better than you do. You're actually learning more. I mean, that's the really, really powerful thing for me, at least, was like, even on the birthright trip, even in these 10 days on the birthright trip, I learned so much more about, quote unquote, my people, this like direct genetic ancestry line I have that goes back thousands of years. I'm being taught about all the things that Jews experienced and how they ended up in Israel and being expelled from Israel and back in Israel. And, these ancient sites in Jerusalem where some of the first Jews kind of gathered in prayer together.
And you didn't just stop at birthright. Like, you returned to Israel, you moved there for 6 months after college, went to yeshiva.
You get a desire to entrench yourself in the experience and in the country. And that's what happened to me. Was I had this and I got this little nibble of it and I wanted more. And so I came back and I actually spent real time there, 6 months living there, studied in a Bolshevi yeshiva, which is a yeshiva specifically designed for Jews who were raised secular. And sort of by day was studying and learning about Judaism and studying Torah and learning Hebrew a little bit. And then at evenings and nights and weekends was traveling Israel and traveling the region and kind of just experiencing life in this country that was so distinct and different.
And you didn't segregate yourself from Palestinian people. Like, you talk about how you traveled through the Rafah crossing. You traveled to post-Arab Spring Egypt. So you were talking to people who weren't just Israeli.
I very, very intentionally on the second trip wanted to kind of get out of the birthright bubble and experience the country in a more authentic way. And I was really intentional about doing that, about meeting Arab or Palestinian people in the neighborhood that I lived in where I played basketball with them, or going to Tel Aviv and talking to people on the beach who were not Jews or Orthodox Jews or whatever else, and hearing about their perspectives on the country and what it was like for them to live there.
You wrote this thing that struck me, which was that the more people you spoke to, the more complicated your feelings got. The more you read and experienced, the less you felt you knew. But somehow your love and connection to Israel only grew. And that struck me because I think a lot of people, when your feelings get more complicated, it kind of dulls your affection for a place or a person. That doesn't seem to have happened to you. Can you explain why?
I think the same way that, you learn about the United States and the nuances and the complications and the blemishes and all these horrible events that took place in the history of this country and in the history of Israel, for me, they add to the depth of the kind of miracle that the place survived and became a place that had so many positive attributes. I mean, Israel, for all of its faults, is generally speaking the Jewish homeland. It's a safe place for Jews to go. It's economically prosperous in the context of the region where it is. It's pretty democratic and free. There are a lot of things to love about the country. And when you're there, you also look around and experience the geography and the incredible mix of people that you don't get in many other Middle Eastern places. I mean, the reality is a lot of Arabs and Palestinians and Jews and Muslims are all rubbing shoulders and living together. And you see like there's so much here that's good and beautiful and interesting.
Your experience, I feel like, gave you an ability on October 7th to kind of see what would happen next. I felt the same way. The first show we did after October 7th was basically like, what happens now is going to be terrible, is going to be a humanitarian disaster. And I feel like you responded in that way too. But at the time, a lot of people felt like, but there's no other way for Israel to respond than with force, right?
Yeah. The thing that I was doing, again, was consuming a lot of Israeli media in Hebrew and translated from Hebrew to English, and realizing like, whoa, the rhetoric has changed in a way overnight that is frightening. And it was frustrating because on the kind of Palestinian liberation side, before a single bomb dropped, they were accusing Israel of genocide and ethnic cleansing and all this stuff. And so as somebody in my position, you're doing this thing where you're like defending Israel from these preemptive claims about what they've done, while also trying to warn that, like, yeah, they might do that thing. And also recognizing that the sort of situation that Hamas created necessitated a response, and that Israel didn't really have many good options on the table for what to do. I mean, it's really hard. I think what I didn't account for was that Israel's response would go on for so long, and that the images coming out of Gaza would be so horrific, and that they would effectively flatten the entire strip. I mean, they've destroyed so much of Gaza, and so many people have died, that I think we sort of passed the threshold of what felt like a response in the interest of deterrence, or a response that was proportionate to the attack.
We'll be right back after a break.
Hi, I'm David Sirota, investigative journalist at The Lever, Oscar-nominated writer on the film Don't Look Up, former Bernie Sanders speechwriter, and host of the chart-topping news podcast, Lever Time. Each week, our team of reporters at The Lever exposes the events, news, and corruption that often go unreported by corporate media. So if you're looking for a podcast that goes below the surface, listen to Lever Time every week, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey there, Slate listeners. It's David Plotz, one of the hosts of the Political Gabfest, a podcast where informal and irreverent discussion meet sharp political analysis every week. On our recent episode, Only 100 Days, we had a fascinating conversation with Washington Post reporter Dan Diamond about the long-term impacts of the DOGE cuts on U.S. healthcare and health policy.
What DOGE has done in terms of cutting programs and people, that has immediate consequences and also long-term risk that's getting baked into the system that I don't think anyone saw coming.
One of those risks is to food safety.
They say that they're protecting the food inspectors, but they have cut around those inspectors. Inevitably, there are going to be fewer food safety inspections because there's a smaller apparatus to do it.
Join me, along with CBS News' John Dickerson and Emily Bazelon from the New York Times, every week to stay on top of the news without getting bogged down. Listen to the Political Gabfest, where you can come for the debate and stay for the cocktail chatter. That's Political Gabfest, wherever you get your podcasts.
When was the moment where you began to question your Zionism?
I think for me, it has happened slowly. I think the thing that has most triggered my doubts has been when expressing genuine horror and empathy for the Palestinian people, seeing the response from other Zionists. I was genuinely surprised at how difficult it has been to get people who are self-identified as Zionists to conjure empathy, genuine, real empathy for what's been happening in Gaza. And I think that is part of what's made me feel like there's something rotten to the core about where this movement has gone that I don't know what to do about anymore, is that there's just a lot of people who are uninterested in hearing about what reality is like on the ground in Gaza because they are so upset and angry and fearful and scared, frankly, about what Hamas did and where the kind of Israel-Palestinian relationship is right now.
Yeah. And part of what I appreciated about your piece is that you wrote about how you hear from your readers a lot saying, call what's happening in Gaza a genocide, or it's not a genocide. And you really wanted to take this conversation seriously and say, what if I really analyze, like, what is happening here? Is there a name for it? And you actually went through the UN Convention on Genocide, the points it lays out for a definition of genocide. And you kind of come out the other side. You know, you talk about how one part of the definition is killing members of a specific group. That's definitely happening. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, which is something that, you know, people in Israel are openly talking about now, moving people from the Gaza Strip to other countries with a question mark about whether they can return. Were you surprised when you began to do this deeper analysis where you said, okay, let me just look at the rules and see if this fits, that this really did fit a definition that I think you had hesitated to put on what was happening in Gaza?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that really pushed me over the edge was the embrace of the forcibly removing Gazans from the Strip. Because early on in the war, there were plans for that, leaked Israeli plans circulating in the press. There was a lot of debate about what the end game was. And I really did not believe that Israel would ever get there. I mean, at the time, it was unfathomable that they were going to try and move 2 million people out of the Strip and reoccupy it and turn the clock back 20 years. It seemed unbelievable to me. And in the last couple of months, I mean, we saw Trump propose a literal ethnic cleansing of Gaza and, you know, building some great new Riviera of the Middle East there. And then we sort of saw that morph into an actual genuine proposal that now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is saying is basically the proposal and a condition for the war ending that's effectively non-negotiable. And I think the embrace of this idea that we can just move these millions of people out of the Strip and into other countries or camps in northern Egypt or whatever it is. I mean, that reaction to it had really pushed me over the edge. And made me see that even if, you know, what they're doing maybe doesn't meet the total definition of genocide, it's pretty much indisputable that what they're proposing is an ethnic cleansing. I mean, it's definitionally what an ethnic cleansing is.
Yeah, you quote Defense Minister Israel Katz to explain your take here, where, you know, he basically has said recently that residents of Gaza need to overthrow Hamas and release all Israeli hostages. And then they will maybe have the opportunity to be relocated to other parts of the world, or they can stay and be killed, which is a horrific choice. Not really a choice.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, Xi Jinping aiming nukes at the United States and telling us that we need to overthrow the White House and evict Donald Trump, or else they're going to bomb the country and pick one. You know, the options are very clear about what they're doing. I mean, and this is about as explicit a declaration of genocidal intent as you're going to find from a leader, a military leader in the press. It's like they don't typically say these kinds of things openly, but he is. It's really alarming to me.
Can I ask what things are like for you personally now? I assume you're still an observant Jew, still going to synagogue. How is that?
Really complicated. I would say, you know, I I published this piece on Friday at noon. And I actually, this weekend, I had a family vacation for my dad's birthday. I was in North Carolina with my brothers and my family and some extended family. And I just the piece went out and we were at the beach in North Carolina. I just shut my computer and put my phone down and just went outside for 2 or 3 hours and kind of disconnected. And when I came back and opened my phone, I had about 80 text messages in the 2 hours that the piece had gone out. And, that's not accounting for the inbox and the emails, the people who only know me professionally or read my stuff through Tangle, but just 80 text messages that were pretty much all about the piece coming from people in my personal life, having this huge wide range of reactions to them. Thank you for publishing this, to I find so much of what you wrote problematic. I hope you really think about X, Y, or Z. In some spaces, I feel really ostracized, and in other spaces, I feel embraced.
Do any of those places feel comfortable for you?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, I think that is something that I said in the piece is it seems like everybody wants you to kind of pick up a flag or pick a team and get on the side and dig in. And so I felt really alone. And I do still in my personal life, I feel really complicated and difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are so many Jewish people who see anti-Semitic attacks like those that have happened in the U.S. in the last couple of weeks, and they see it as some kind of justification for what's happening in Gaza. I wonder if when you wrote this piece, whether you were thinking about reaching those people who are hard to reach. Because that's what you do at your news outlet, Tangle. It's all about getting people to talk across their divides. I wonder if you hoped by writing something personal, extensively researched, vulnerable, you might reach just a few more people and feel a little less lonely.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, there's no point in writing a piece like this if you do it in a way that can't connect with the folks who are going to disagree with you, or maybe, struggle to understand elements of your perspective. I mean, I think, it cuts both ways. I think the way that parts of the piece are sort of articulating the kind of Palestinian liberation lens of the conflict and talking about the reality, in my view, that there is a proposed ethnic cleansing underway, or an ethnic cleansing underway happening right now. That earns the respect and trust of people who view the thing that way. So when I write the section about not joining the other team and all the extremism that exists in Gaza and how, there will never be peace unless the schools and the Strip stop teaching people to hate Jews and Israelis, and that Hamas can't stay in power and us sit here and expect peace, that maybe those points will resonate more for those people and vice versa, And so my hope, my sincere wish is that the kind of conflicted views that I have and the struggle that I have with a lot of the stuff that I'm articulating openly and sort of being personal and vulnerable about will create empathy for people on both sides of the conflict for the different perspectives that they might not agree with.
The title of your piece was about you leaving Zionism, or maybe Zionism leaving me. A lot of people hear the word Zionism and they think it necessitates Jewish supremacy politically. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the great challenges of Israel as a whole is how do you create a Jewish state that's not an ethno-state or doesn't have the qualities of an ethno-state that we all recognize to be morally bankrupt? And that has always been a really tough question that I don't totally know the answer to. But I think if you're working from the position where certain ethnicities need to be elevated in a legal and societal framework, then you've kind of already lost the moral battle, and that's going to create a lot of problems. And It's something I don't think this iteration of the Zionist movement really grapples with anymore. I think it's just accepted and demanded that kind of like quote unquote Jewish supremacy exists in Israeli society. And I think that is a really, really big problem, and one that like I've always been critical of.
Do you feel robbed? Do you feel like you had this identity that you kind of loved and it's been taken from you?
I think I feel angry that, you know, I can't be in a room full of strangers and say casually that I'm a Zionist or that I, you know, believe in the project of Israel without expecting to be like shouted down or ostracized or face really virulent response.
But it sounds like also you feel like the response is deserved, and that's part of why you don't want to associate as a Zionist anymore.
I understand it and I empathize with it. I think, you know, the simplest way I can put it is like if there was some kind of role reversal or a, you know, historical alternate universe we were living in where Palestinians and the Arab states had control of Israel and Jews were living in the Gaza Strip and being, you know, bombed into oblivion and killed by the tens of thousands as they tried in like their last grasping breath to fight for control of Jerusalem, I would feel really negatively towards those Arab states and Palestinian states. I mean, that it isn't hard. Like, I don't know why it's so hard for many Jews or Israelis or Zionists to sort of do that thought experiment, but quite obviously, I would feel really, really, really negatively and angrily toward the like hypothetical Arab Palestinian state conducting that kind of violence against people I identified as my people. So yeah, I get it. I very much get it. And it's why I, you know, wrote pretty early on, like the Zionist case for a ceasefire, which is that I believed ending the war sooner and in a more targeted fashion would be better long-term for peace for Israelis and Jews globally. We haven't gotten that and we haven't gotten peace. So I'm not surprised by the outcome.
Isaac, I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mary.
Isaac Saul is the executive editor of Tangle. If you go to that site, you can sign up to get his newsletter every single day. It's great. Check it out. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, Ethan Oberman, and Isabel Angell. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.